Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are with another series. This time it's focused on Warhammer the Old World. So for those that aren't aware, Warhammer the Old World is a return to the original lore and world of Warhammer Fantasy Battle before Age of Sigmar, and with it brings essentially a new game for the tabletop, but is a return to the style of Warhammer Fantasy Battle with rank and file. Now, this has been announced as being in creation right now with Games Workshop. There is currently no release date, but it certainly is expected either by the end of 2023 or the first half of 2024. So in reality, not that far away. Now, in terms of what this series is looking at, it's looking at those models that are currently available to buy that could well be expected to be part of the army books and army lists that will be used in Warhammer the Old World. Now, we do know there are new models coming, and we'll look at that when we come on to each of the factions. We'll be looking at the factions in alphabetical order, starting with those that are currently in the narrative, and then looking at those that are outside of the narrative, though we do know there are at least rules coming for every faction when the game is first released. Now, why am I doing this? Well, for people like me who are old Warhammer Fantasy Battle players that probably still have existing armies, maybe gathering dust somewhere, who haven't been keeping up to date with what's available on the web store, it's a look at what you could still buy to flesh out the armies that you already own. If you're new to Warhammer Fantasy Battle, then it's a look at, if you were going to start an army, what an army might look like, what the models might look like, and give you a chance to maybe dip in early. If you're like me, I'm a very slow painter, so this gives me a chance to buy models in advance of the game being released and have them painted and ready to play when the game does fully release. And as well, not many people are sat there with, £300, £400, £500. We don't know how big the armies are going to be to drop on an army on day one. So this does allow you to then spread the costs over buying the units over many, many months. And sort of you can buy a unit, paint it up, and next month buy a unit, and you're not having to find the money all in one go. Now, I should say everything that is in this series are personal opinions only. I have no inside knowledge. I have no relationship with Games Workshop in that way, other than being a fan of Warhammer Fantasy Battle and the lore of that game, and everything in the series is correct at the time of recording only, and I have based a lot of what I'm going to talk about on the last remaining army book that was published for the factions. Many of those will be 8th edition, but there are a few like Chaos Dwarfs and Bretonnia that didn't have 8th edition army books. Now, before we get into it, other miniatures are available. You can find, obviously, the old classic miniatures that are no longer available to buy from Games Workshop on eBay, for example. You've got other manufacturers that you can use as counts as, such as DS Vault with their sort of Crusaders and Templars and so on, Kings of War. There's also those 3D printer opportunities out there, whether you own a 3D printer and you're looking for the files, or whether you're looking for someone to do it for you. That's an option, but always remember that non-official Games Workshop models are not usually allowed to be used in their stores, at gaming tables, or in the tournaments. Also, when you're looking at the Games Workshop models on their website, check the bases. Some of these will have round bases, some of them will have square. Now, we know that they're going to be square bases, but we also know there's going to be some base size changes, so please keep that in mind when you're buying the models. And again, if a lot of times the bases you don't really care if you're just playing at home or playing in a local club, but if you are playing in tournament, you will need obviously the correct base sizes. But if you're not too fussed about making sure they're fully correct, then you've obviously, consider the fact that when you're playing a rank and file game like Warhammer Fantasy Battle was, and like the old world will be, movement trays will be a really important part. So you can mitigate a lot of the base issues with movement trays. Also, check the material. Some people really don't like fine cast, so there's still quite a lot of the old models that are dotted around that may well be fine cast, so check that out versus plastic. And if you are looking at stuff off eBay or whatever, and it's forge wheeled, that of course will be resin, so for example the Chaos Dwarves. And overall, given what we know about Warhammer the Old World, the timeline it's going to be set in, I would avoid buying named characters unless there's a nostalgia thing. There will surely be rules, even if Games Workshop doesn't do it. The fan base will provide rules for some of those characters that you might have played in the past. You can consider the timeline and maybe take a gamble on, if you look at some of the longer lived characters, whether they be demons or whatever, even elves, for example. Maybe those characters will make an appearance. But with a new game, with a new timeline, I can certainly expect that we might see a few new named characters put in. Though, of course, as always, you can use these named characters as accounts as. So if you had Karl Franz, the Emperor of the Empire, for example, on his Griffin, there's no reason you couldn't use him as a general on Griffin if that option was available. So that is essentially the intro of why we're doing it and some of the considerations that you need to consider while we go through each of these videos. But without further ado, let's go and look at the next faction. So the next faction on the list is the Dark Elves, a big fan favourite of mine. As per the previous videos, we will be utilising the 8th edition army list and the latest version of the army book for the faction as a basis for what we're going to talk about, and as we are looking at the models still available on Games Workshop's website. Now, Dark Elves, as per the previous couple of videos, are on the outside of the list of factions in the narrative campaign, so they will get rules upon release of the game, but we know not what they might get thereafter, and at the moment there is no plan, so it's going to definitely depend upon how well the old world performs. But that being said, let's look at what is available. So in terms of special lords, and I certainly don't recommend getting these given the timeline, but I think you might be a little bit safer on those army lists that are outside, because we're looking at essentially unsupported, if you like, army lists for the Dark Elves. But Malekith not available, and Malus Darkblade is not. But Morathi is available, though she's part of essentially a 2 set of models for £95, which is for Age of Sigmar, one in her big monstrous form and one without. You could quite credibly use the one on foot, which is a much smaller model of Morathi. However, you'd be paying quite a lot of money to get that. So unless you're intending to use Morathi in Age of Sigmar, or you just happen to really like the model, I think it's I don't think it's worth to go for it just to get a Morathi on foot, but the option is there. Hellebrand is available. She's now known as a Slaughter Queen, but it is Hellebrand and was marketed as Hellebrand at the time. But you have to buy the Cauldron of Blood to get her. So she's £50, and you see that in the centre middle picture. Though if you do pick up a Cauldron of Blood, you do get lots of different options of how you want to build it with a Blood Rack Shrine. If you build it with Hellebrand on the Cauldron of Blood, and you build it as a Blood Rack Shrine, and you get the Blood Rack Medusa on foot. If you build it as a Blood Rack Shrine, you get Hellebrand on foot. So there's lots of options with the Cauldron of Blood. I think it's a great plastic model. It looks pretty cool, and lots of options for if you build it one way or another, you can get the remaining miniatures on foot, and that's one way to get Hellebrand either on her mount or on foot. In terms of the Dreadlord on Black Dragon, he is still available at £37.50, and that is the model you see in the centre there, centre top. And aligned with that, you can also build it with a Supreme Sorceress on Black Dragon. So essentially, same dragon, two different riders. But you can also pick up a Supreme Sorceress on foot for £12. So that is another option. No option for a High Beastmaster. You can still get the Black Ark Fleetmaster. However, he is only available in a start collecting set in Age of Sigmar, which is £70. So essentially, you'd be paying £70 just to get one model on foot. However, there are other Dark Elf models in that set. So if you are interested in all of those models, then yes, you'll pick yourself up a Black Ark Fleetmaster. Otherwise, if you only want that one, I'd be searching in alternate locations. In terms of special heroes, you've got Shadowblade. Now, he's currently listed as an assassin for £17, and that is the picture you see in the centre top. Interestingly, that is the original Shadowblade sculpt. So that is Shadowblade that you see. For when he was a Dark Elf, he's now just generic assassin, and could also be used as a generic K-Knight assassin hero as well. So even if a rule doesn't come to use him in the army list, I'm sure there will be a K-Knight assassin, and you can use that one there. Lokir Felheart, Koran Dark Cannon, Talaris Dreadbringer. No current models available for those. Shame Lokir Felheart had a really nice model, but not currently available. It'll be interesting to see if any of the older kits and which ones of the older kits come back, though I believe Lokir ended up being in Finecast. So I'm not sure how many, if any, Finecast kits we'll see come back. In terms of heroes, as we said, there's the Sorceress. You can use her as a Sorceress or a Supreme Sorceress there for £12. No Master available, but you've got a Death Hag. That comes with the Cauldron of Blood. So depending how you build it, if you build it with Hellebrand on, then you've got Death Hag on foot. If you build it with a Death Hag on the Cauldron of Blood, then you can have Hellebrand on foot and so on. So that's £50, and the K-Knight Assassin we've already talked about. In terms of core units, though, the Dark Elves are in a pretty good place. All their core units are still available. Dread Spears, Bleak Swords are available, 10 for £25, and you can you also see there's Dark Shards there, 10 for £25. Dark Shards with their repeater crossbows. That's in the bottom middle picture. You've got Black Ark Corsairs, again 10 for £20. So not bad at all, I have to say, in terms of cost per model, on the better end of the currently available kits for Warhammer: The Old World. You've got Dark Riders, which is bottom right there, 5 for £27.50. And then finally the Witch Elves, which are 10 for £37.50, which remain, as you can see, it's £12.50 more expensive for the same number of models of Dark Shards and so on, and £17.50 more expensive than the same number of Black Ark Corsairs. So something to consider when looking at Witch Elves. All of these units, though, are absolutely sort of iconic units, including the Witch Elves. So they're all going to be in the army list and all absolutely viable and potentially worth picking up now. So Dark Elves in a pretty good shape in terms of core units. Not bad either in special units, as we can see. The only ones not available are the Shades, the Reaper Bolt Throwers, and the Harpies. Cold One Knights are available, which are known as Drakespawn Knights on the website. That's 5 for £22.50, which is pretty good value. You've got the Black Guard of Nagarond, which is a shared kit with the Harganeth Executioners, known as Black Guard, 10 for 35, or Executioners, 10 for 35, and you can see that on the left-hand pictures. Black Guard at the top, Executioners underneath. Quite pricey for 10 models, but they are pretty nice looking miniatures all the same. And Black Guard and Harganeth Executioners are, along with the Drakespawn Knights, are iconic units. You've got the Cold One Chariot, known as a Drakespawn Chariot. That's in the middle bottom picture there at £32.50. not to be confused with the Scourge Runner Chariot, also £32.50, but is slightly different in look. And finally there you've got the War Hydra. Again, that is a pretty nice, not that old plastic kit at £45 and is a joint kit with the Charybdis, which you'll see in the rare units. So overall pretty solid, but again, just keep an eye. You can see on the War Hydra and the Chariot, for example, those oval bases. So again, have a think before you build these or even buy these about what you're going to do about the basing. Are you playing tournaments? Does the base shape and size matter that much to you? And if it does, you know, how quickly do you jump the gun before knowing the base size? Because even if it's square, the base sizes could change. In terms of rare units, again, Dark Elves. I mean, Dark Elves here in almost as good a situation as the Demons. Not quite, but not far off. Doomfire Warlocks available, 5 for £27.50. Blood Rack Medusa. So the Blood Rack Medusa is on foot if you build the Cauldron of Blood as a Cauldron of Blood and not a Blood Rack Shrine. So if you build it with Hellerbron or the Death Hag on the Cauldron, then you've got the Blood Rack Medusa on foot. If you build it as a Blood Rack Shrine, which is the second image in from the left-hand side there, then you'll have the Blood Rack Medusa on there, and then you get the Death Hag and Hellerbron on foot. Charybdis there, Monster from the Deep, is there at £45, as I say, shared kit with the War Hydra. And you can also see the Sisters of Slaughter there. They're 10 for £37.50. You'll notice that is, again, quite expensive for a unit compared to the others on this list. But it is a shared kit with the Witch Elves, and hence you can see the same price for the Witch Elves and the Sisters of Slaughter. So there you go, Dark Elves in a pretty strong position for miniatures. Fairly easy to build a Dark Elf army well in advance of the Old World coming out. And I think it's pretty straightforward that, you know, most of the units we've seen here are pretty Dark Elf iconic, and I absolutely can see them being in the army list that is released at the beginning of the release of the Warhammer The Old World. I hope this video has been useful. If it is, then give it a thumbs up. But if it wasn't and you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down and let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, then please hit that subscribe button. Totally free for you to do, but means a lot for me. So thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you very soon.